Welcome to Attitude of Altitude podcast presented by Planet of One. This podcast is designed to inspire change in people to become the best versions of themselves and live their best lives. We share stories of struggle and success to encourage and empower listeners to be bold, take action, and be the change we desire to see in this world. We are all part of this planet. We are all a planet of one. Know that your attitude determines your altitude in life. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Attitude of Altitude. We have an incredible guest with us today. She is an empowerment vocal coach. And I got to tell you, I snuck a peek, very good peek at her website. And I've had a chance to be in a special private class that she's been conducting through a friend of ours, a common friend of ours. And it's given me an insight of who she is and really wanted her to be on this podcast. So I'm going to give you a little bit of what I grabbed off of her mission. She is here to empower voices everywhere, one heart at a time. When your voice is empowered, you are empowered. What else could be more important? Welcome, Todman.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you. I'm doing great. I've been looking forward for us chatting and getting the audience and the listeners to actually get to know you a little bit more. The best place I'd love to start is, how long have you been a vocal coach? And how did you start your journey as a vocal coach?
Whoosh. That's a great question. Here in LA, I've been here 20 years. So I've been doing it since I've been here, but full time for 15 years. But I've been working with voice and coaching since I was just a kid. I was just put in leadership positions. My mom, who loves to sing, was a great role model, and she was always in musicals and things like that. And so I got music in my head at a young age. And then I started singing, and then people would hear me sing and go, well, how do you do that? And I didn't know. I was like, I don't know. And then I sort of went to school for it and studied music and theater arts education and psychology, because I couldn't make up my mind which one, and got a teaching degree as well. And then that all ended up helping me to become my own vocal empowerment coach, right? Because I'm a performer. And then in the process, I also had the opportunity to work with other people.
Well, actually, tell us about all the different things that you do besides being a vocal coach.
Okay. Well, full time, I am working with people and clients, but I'm also a performer. So, for example, last year I did my own one-woman show and got on stage with Bobby McFerrin as well and sang up in San Francisco. That was so much fun. And I've been working on my own music and writing music since I was 4. And, I guess what sort of happened to me is, like my dad jokes, he says, your teaching career ruined your singing career. Because, I think as a woman, you tend to put other people ahead of you. And then before you know it, boom, what ended up happening was I didn't expect that my teaching career would kind of blow up as fast as it did. Back in 2007, I was in a show in 2003 or 4. It's been a minute. Keanu Reeves actually came, and I got to sing for Keanu Reeves.
Oh.
So I got to write up in that show and everything, and I felt good about what was happening, but I didn't understand the egos and the different, I couldn't deal with, I wasn't always comfortable. Let me put it like that. And when I got called to auditions and whatnot, I would feel all of a sudden that confidence that I had on stage when I knew that it was going to be okay. When I felt judged, for me, it was auditions. I just was like, where did all my confidence go? So I thought I really need to stop and put my singing on hold and figure this part out. And I thought, well, I was teaching in the school system. I'm also a certified teacher. So I was teaching theater arts. That's what I'm certified to teach in psychology. But I actually was teaching things like math and English and reading and phonetics and stuff like that to young kids all the way from South Central, all the way up to Panorama City and through Beverly Hills. So I had an opportunity to learn a lot about Los Angeles. And then, of course, I also taught in other states like Washington, D.C., and in Florida, and in Utah, and in Idaho. So I've seen the school systems as well. And I felt very much, how can you say, when you walk into a classroom of people and you have all these eyeballs staring at you that want to learn, and there's all this energy, right? In a way, it's good prep as a teacher, as a performer, right? Because you have to own your energy and deliver a message and have clarity. But when I was younger, when I first started doing it in high school and even in elementary school, I was asked to direct specific plays and things like that. I didn't really realize, because I was one of the kids, so I didn't realize it was a big deal. But what ended up happening over time, once I graduated from university and I started teaching, I started feeling sick. I started getting ill. I was working at places like residential treatment centers before I came to LA, where all of the kids that were a little bit toxic, shall we say, that got shipped out of their state went. And I would be dealing with these kids that just were angry and upset and frustrated. And I was teaching them meditation and I was teaching them how to get in touch with their voice, but I did not yet understand how to protect my own energy. So I started getting very sick. And I also learned then when I came to, so I had to quit those jobs. When I came to LA and kind of was doing like tutorial stuff and could get more of the kids one-on-one, or working at homeschooling kids for mothers and supporting with families and creating curriculums and whatnot. What ended up happening for me was I started to realize I don't like the way the school system is. It doesn't feel like all the little souls are getting what they need. Everyone's so individual and everyone learns so differently. And I knew that I also learned differently, that I wasn't a typical, regular student. I would daydream all the time. You could say I had the ADD, I'd be looking out the window, and then I would bring one of these, I'd bring a tape recorder to my classes. Like even in university, I would bring my tape recorder, and because I was so bored in class, I taught myself how to write really fast so I could regurgitate all the information. I don't know why I'm telling you this, I tell it on myself, but regurgitate all the information on my paper, and then I'd listen back because I was more auditory. But if the teacher was just boring and they talk like this, I was picking up all these other things about people through their voice, and I didn't understand. And no one talked about like the energy of people and what's really going on behind the words. And so I had a lot of sensitivities, and there were a lot of things that I was picking up on that no one would talk about and made no sense. And so I eventually created my own school, if you will, or vocal empowerment system that basically was a conglomeration of information that I learned over the years to help me be in alignment and to help me be the person that I want to be. And I'm still a work in progress. So haven't figured all of it out yet.
I could definitely see through your class, the private class, how you bring the energy piece and the heart piece and the mind piece all together. You're not working with individuals on just their voice and exercises. You're working on something so much bigger. And that was the first thing that literally grabbed my attention when I joined your class there. It's like, oh, this is different, because as a speaker, as doing all kinds of things, as an entrepreneur, everyone needs their voice to stand out and show who they are. And I could see you from the people that are in the class, how individually you're paying attention to each one and bringing out some of that in them. I want to know, Doc, in 2007, I know you went through something. How did that transform you to become the incredible vocal coach that you are today?
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, 2007 was a really tough year, but I mean, I guess I should probably say what happened. So um, basically, I had a disease. It's called endometriosis. I don't know if you've heard of that disease. People are talking about that disease right now. It's kind of funny, but we won't talk about that. But I had a condition called endometriosis, and it was actually quite severe. It ended up becoming stage 4. Now, I also had a thyroid condition. It was hyperthyroid. Many people are hypo, which will make you overweight, and it will, slow down your metabolism. But in my case, I had a really fast metabolism. And it was a very rare form of hyperthyroidism, but you don't want to have hyperthyroidism and endometriosis because the foods that you can eat for endometriosis are canceled out with hyperthyroidism. So needless to say, there was a lot of unexpressed energy in my throat chakra. Now, I did not believe in chakras. I was very much traditional, very left brain, very structured, very like, give me the proof. If I don't see the proof, it's not real. So I guess the universe knew that, and a series of crazy things happened to me. If I go all the way back to 1996, when I lived in Florida, I met a gentleman who is considerably, I think he was about probably in his 50s, but he was a Qigong, master, like he could do Qigong, and he was very much energy guy. Now, at the time, I thought that was total woo-woo. I thought he was satanic. Was very strong religious beliefs. And he would always point to his third eye and go, you know what, everything's here. And I was always like, no, it's in my heart. Like, Jesus is in my heart, and Jesus is still in my heart. Jesus is great. But at the time, I didn't know what he was talking about. One day, this gentleman, we were speaking, and he took his hand, and he put it on his forehead. And then he put it on my forehead like this. And I was like, what just happened? What did you just do? And he goes, oh, you'll see. And I just thought that was really weird. In about 30 minutes, I'm not joking, I was driving, and all of a sudden, I felt like my head basically opened up, and I just felt this outpouring of love, and I started to cry. And I had to pull over because I was driving. And I was with a person, and I said, oh my gosh, what's happening? I thought my forehead was open. And she's like, I don't know, but I feel really weird too. So I don't know what this fellow had done, but I called him when I got home. I said, what's going on? What just happened? And he said, oh, it worked. I'm like, what worked? Oh, nothing. Whatever you experience is what God would have you experience. Well, lo and behold, I find out that my third eye had opened. I didn't even know what a third eye was. But what's really weird about that, and I've never really shared this before, but I don't know if that made a thyroid problem, because, your pituitary gland controls your thyroid. But it was a couple years after that, I started having thyroid issues. Now, what I didn't mention, even though like my third eye opened, what I didn't mention is for 3 days, it was really intense. I could see everything. I could see, before that, the world was love and puppies and bunnies, and I was so optimistic and la la la. And I just thought the world was this wonderful place. I was very naive. But once my third eye opened, I not only saw the light, but I saw the darkness. I could tell when people were lying to me. I could just see into people's souls, and it scared the crap out of me. It scared me so much that I asked that it would be taken away because I couldn't handle it. I also started becoming a magnet. So people would come up and they'd just be intrigued. And so this was really weird for me, like being someone who was just very like structured left brain, and all of a sudden, I was right brain too, but I was very logical. So that happened. That didn't make any sense. I went on later to try to start researching that. I read a book called Anatomy of the Spirit by Caroline Myss. And she talks about, like, this was the first chakra book I read. It was in 1998. And I'm like, this is weird, but it was cool, but kind of set it aside. And then I came to LA in 2000. And the next thing you know, my thyroid starts really acting up. I had a goiter like the size of a golf ball right here. It was huge. And
Not
if you
good
go
for a
back,
voice coach.
no. And you know what? I honestly believe it was unexpressed energy. It was unexpressed energy. But I went to probably every, like, basically the Western medicine doctor said, we could, if we cut this out, you know, you should get it cut out. Of course, the surgeon's going to say that. But they're like, there's a chance we could cut your vocal cords. And if that happens, you may never sing again. So I was like, oh my gosh. And they're like, or you could take the radioactive iodine. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's, both options sound horrible. I have to do it natural. So that's when I started really going on the spiritual path and reading all these books like The Power of Now, and like learning like a little bit like Yogananda, and just trying to open my mind to other stuff other than what I had known. And long story long, what ended up happening is nothing got better. Like I was really thin, like way thinner than I am now. And I had this really big thing in my throat. And I had my endometriosis got so bad that was the other reason why I couldn't sing, because every time I had a really important audition or something, like really big opportunity, bam, I get hit so hard I couldn't leave the house, had to walk with a cane. I mean, it was bad. It was crippling. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. So I got really discouraged and sad, and that's also what led me to, say, okay, I'm just gonna, well, between that and, I quit. I finally just quit the tutoring and stuff and after school stuff, because it was driving around and just working. And I was always doing this. Remember this? I was always putting energy out and doing. And I said enough. And I remember one time I was working with this little boy, and the thought popped into my head that said, it would be so cool if I was teaching this kid how to sing instead of math. Because I was like teaching this kid like times tables. Like we would make up songs and do creative things. And I learned a lot about the things that, not just what kids are learning in school, but how it's affecting them energetically, and being in the home, looking at the dynamic between the parent and the kids. And like here, I was just this outside person coming in. At the time, it was funded by the No Child Left Behind Act. So I don't know if you remember that. That was like pre-Obama. But there were programs like that I sort of found my way into. So I was kind of always like that person that would come in and make everything kind of better, like help the kid that was struggling. And then I was working at the Sylvan Learning Center as an administrative assistant there. So the Sylvan Learning Center, again, that's another outside school that helps the kids that can't quite make it. A lot of those kids, we call them indigo kids, right? So I'm in this journey of education, realizing, like, seeing all the pitfalls and how the schools aren't quite working the way they need to. And even knowing, like, how'd I end up with a 3.8 GPA in college is because I learned how to give back what they wanted. But if you ask me, what did you really learn? I don't know. I don't know. I don't remember what I learned. What I learned was more about experience and energy and connection and relationships. So the way I see the world, I realize it's a lot different than most people. What ended up happening for me is that one day I just said, oh my gosh, I quit. And then I said, okay, now I have to teach. And what was really interesting is within 1 month, my whole life had changed. I had doubled, tripled my income just in 1 month. Students just came out of nowhere. But what was so interesting, when I first asked that question and said, I wish I could just teach voice to this little boy, this voice came in my head and said, you'll never do that because, artists are flaky and they'll never show up. They'll never, like, artists are too flaky. So I just put it out of my mind, and then I kept teaching. And then it was maybe months later that I quit. And I did it. I started teaching, and then everything just sort of magically fell into place. And so that was in 2000, I believe, 2005. That's when I started doing it full time. I had a handful of clients that, people that just like to sing. They just find me from this or that, go, oh, teach me. And I studied with some coaches here in LA and stuff, and learned a lot too. I had this thing, like, I have to be the best coach, and I have to make sure I know. And even though I went to school for it, so it's very, very technical to start.
All the right brain stuff.
Yeah, the left brain, the logical, technical. So then what happened? You asked what happened in 2007. So I just wanted to kind of give you some backstory. In the meantime, the more clients I get, all of a sudden my stomach starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it looks like a basketball. And I'm like super skinny. I'm like I'm 5'9" and I'm weighing like 115 pounds. So people are looking at me like, do you eat? You know, they think I'm starving myself. I was eating 7 meals a day, but my thyroid was crazy. And I would suffer excruciating pain. The pain that I would suffer was so excruciating. It just felt like someone took a knife and just like were slicing through my intestines like this and wiggling the knife. And it was so bad that I remember I laughing. It was so bad that I just had to laugh. I'd be on the floor. I couldn't get up. A friend would come over and pick me up and feed me because I couldn't eat. Like, so it got worse and worse. And then one day a student looked at me and said, "Dot, you look pale." And this was a nice little white boy. And when a white boy tells you look pale, you better be careful. So I was rushed to the ER. And what happened was they were looking at me and they're like, "Why is her throat like that?" You know, because I had this, and I had this on my second chakra. Basically, my second chakra was, and so what ended up happening was they drained 3 liters of blood out of my stomach. And they're like, "Oh, it's ascites." Well, what the heck's ascites and what was the cause? They're like, "Oh, you had fibroids, you had this, you had this." So I got out of the hospital, and then a month later, it all came back. It all came back. Yeah, it all came back. And this time I was rushed to the ER again because I had almost passed out. This time they went in and I had 3 days where I was just, you know, they were trying to figure out what was wrong. They couldn't figure it out. They were pumping me with morphine. I was throwing up. I basically hit my dark night of the soul. And I remember reading Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. And in the book, he's like, you know, I hit rock bottom and then there was only one way to go up. I remember thinking, oh, I wish I could hit rock bottom so I could evolve spiritually. Watch what you wish for. Because, man, they thought I had cancer. They had me in a cancer unit. And I was with someone that was dying of lung cancer. And all night I heard, and it was so sad. My heart was breaking. I felt like I had insects all over my body trying to eat me. Like I felt like Job in the Old Testament. So it was scary. It was a really scary time. I had no family around. No one was there. And then my mom found out and she flew in from Canada. But what ended up happening, I remember they kept asking, they're like, well, we want to do this thing where we look in we're going to get a camera and look and find out what's going on. And I remember going, no, like I just said, no, I didn't want them to do it. But after 3 days of suffering, and then when my mom showed up, I was like, well, maybe I'll be okay because my mom's there. So I said yes. I finally just gave in. I was on my deathbed. Actually, my mom was not there when I said yes. She was there after. When I woke up, there's this big bandage wrapped around me. It's laying in bed, and I see this big bandage. And for the first time, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace and clarity.
Wow.
I actually felt fully present. Like I didn't have all this stuff going on in my mind. What if this bad thing happens? What if this bad thing happens? What if? And then I saw my mom, and I remember thinking, because I was adopted, and this was my adopted mother, but it was so weird. It was like I felt reborn, and that she was there for my rebirth. And Spirit told me, sounds kind of weird, but this is really what happened. Spirit's like, they had an accident, but you will be okay, and you will heal your body, and they are going to tell you that blah, 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 but you will be fine. So they did. They told me, like, you know, they said, we have bad news. That was my little computer saying I'm sorry.
Timing for it.
Yeah, they said, whoa. That was funny timing. But yeah, they said, you know, we have bad news. They're like, you know, we nicked your bowel by accident. And so you have a bit of a scar, and sorry, we don't know like they still didn't know. I'm like, well, what was wrong? They're like, we don't know. But I was so peaceful. And my mom was just like, but thank God she came, because before she came, they were not treating me right at that hospital. It was really, really rough. I literally would have died. I'm pretty sure I would have died in there if my mom did not show up. So that says something awesome. Yay, America
Yes.
healthcare. But
How
yeah, so
did you get past all of this trauma to begin to evolve and learn about the chakras and really begin to improve, even though they're telling you that you're not going to be okay?
yeah. Well, that's a great question. What ended up happening is they said to me, okay, you're not gonna be able to walk. So they had to show me how to walk again. They left me with an 8-inch scar and 36 staples along my core. And I was down to 98 pounds. So I was just like, my knees looked huge. It was really weird. And so I was like, but I felt the thing was my brain was so clear. I was so present. I was like, I can do anything. I was so happy. So all the pain and like the rejection and like all of the things that bothered me before about my voice, about me, about my family, about my past, gone. It was so weird. It was like, I, I don't know. Like some people say, well, oh, it was a walk-in or whatever. Maybe it was. I mean, I'm still me. I still have my memory. So it's not like I have amnesia looking at my mom like, who are you? But what I remembered was, so even though I kind of thought chakras were woo-woo, I still had, like I had a thing on my wall. It was on a dry erase board. I had a client that would always go, oh, and he would like resonate all the time. And he had the most resonant, juiciest voice. And he would say, resonating, resonating. And so I researched, because I would always be curious what people told me. I always wanted to know everything. So I found out that each chakra, or each organ along the spine, governed by specific energy, like for example, your throat is a chakra, your heart is it's an energy center, it's an organ, it's also a chakra, right? Each one of these had a sound that when you sing it, it would resonate more there. And so when the doctor said it might take 6 to 8 months to heal, I was like, I don't have 6 to 8 months worth of savings. Oh crap, what am I going to do? So I thought, what if that chakra stuff is real? This would be a really good time to find out, because if there's a way that I could sing or do something that might expedite my healing, right? Like maybe
Mm-hmm.
it'll work. Like I was just open to anything, man. I pulled out The Secret. I watched that a million times because, back in 2007, that was a fairly new movie and I had already owned it. So I was watching that. And then I had a roommate that loved Paramahansa Yogananda. And so I was learning about meditation and, researching that stuff and doing his exercises. And then I started doing this is what happened. I was sitting on my couch and I went, excuse me, I went, oh. And as soon as I did that, it was like, I felt the cells in that part of my body just went, wee, like they woke up. And what was it didn't scare me. It made me cry.
Mm.
I actually was like, oh my gosh, they're alive. Like, because I had not spoken in 2 weeks. It's a hard thing to imagine. But I literally had not spoken. Like, I was so shut down. So when I made that sound, like, I had no doubt in my mind that there was something real about chakras and that it wasn't just woo-woo. So then I started chanting. I started mo and just instinctively resonating. And within 2 weeks, granted, I still had staples in my stomach, but within 2 weeks, I was riding my bike with my dog. So I had healed considerably, and I had started teaching again. And I also learned about boundaries, and that I cannot, because what I'd actually realized I had done is I was taking all of my clients, all the energy that they didn't need or want, and I absorbed it into my second chakra. So that's a whole story, and all that to say that, yeah, the doctors took out all the gunk out of my stomach, but I had a doctor say to me, it's all going to grow back in 2 years. So I was like, oh my God, I can't let that grow back. So then I really started delving into the woo-woo land, right? And trying to meditate, trying to eat right. And, I was raw vegan. I was this, I was just everything I could sink my teeth into to stay healthy. Really, I was still in survival mode, to be honest. I was in survival mode, and I also started to learn about not fearing the future, because I knew that every 20 days I was going to get my butt kicked for 10 days straight. And when you have a disease like that, when you know it's going to come, talk about surrendering to the flow, literally, and trying to stay present. So all of these tools I was being taught: don't project into the future. Don't fear when it comes. Sit with your pain. Breathe through your pain. Be willing to allow yourself to feel how you feel, and don't be afraid of it, because it's not you, right? These are things that took years. Like, it took me years. Like, I'm still learning these tools even after I finally had a life-saving surgery in 2015 with excision surgery. So anyone that hears this that has endometriosis, don't do any of the other surgeries. Do excision surgery, because 1 in every 10 women suffer from this illness. And honestly, I used to call it my greatest spiritual teacher, but it's brutal. It's a brutal thing to have, because people don't understand. 1 minute you're like flying on top of the world. Like, when that left, I'd be like, I'm powerful. And like, you almost go into denial, because you're full of so much pain. But they cut 4 inches off my bowel in the end of 2015. So that stuff was literally, it was like sticking knives. It was literally wrapping around my bowels and just pulling them and tearing them, and basically disconnected me from that second chakra. And so I had to learn between then and now how to rebuild that. And that also led through a series of me even losing my voice in 2018. I lost my voice. I don't know if you heard
I did
about
not
that.
know that.
It was devastating. Devastating. Like, I was scared. I'm scared. I'm not scared anymore, but I was scared that anyone would even find out. I thought I would lose my career, and I was not a legitimate vocal coach if I could lose my voice. But then I studied with this wonderful speech therapist who's like, no, many women that have this illness lose connection with this second chakra. And see, she knew about the chakras, even though she was scientific at Cedars-Sinai. And so I loved this woman, because then she found out I was a vocal coach. She's like, well, you should know what you're doing. I'm like, don't do that. Just teach me, because I obviously don't know everything. It's so much easier to help another person and to see what's going on with them than for us to see ourselves. So that was a lot of information.
But Dot, I love how you connected it all, understanding that the chakras, which a lot of people may not even know what a chakra is, that it's actually connected. It's an energy source within each of us that's connected to a specific organ, which actually impacts how we live our life, how we put our voices out there. And you've learned to work through that in your own health, and now have learned to even incorporate it into the voices, the people that you teach. But you don't teach just voice. You teach all about the mind, the body, the heart. So you took that and you made something great out of it. And that's what I really want our listeners to understand, that through this trauma of yours, you learned about you more than anything else, and now have been incorporating that for your clients all over the world. I would love for you to share with us, because I know you've heard you in the class, about the electromagnetics of the heart and all of that, and how that comes into play for the person, and then what their voice is saying about them. If I'm saying it correctly.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I mean, the heart is like, it's really the meat of, where it's at. I like to use this, actually, I'll use this one, looks prettier because I spilled tea on my other one. But this is the main diagram I use to first show people, like, this is your instrument, right? It's what you're thinking or your thoughts, how you feel, and then how that plays a role on your body, right? This is your nervous system. So if you're thinking like, oh my gosh, these people might hate me, then you feel anxiety, then your body's going to tighten up and affect your voice. So we've got the mind and soul, and the heart lives, right? It's green, the heart lives in the soul. C.O.R.E, the 4-step formula, addresses your mind, soul, and body. But the E in C.O.R.E stands for exercises. That comes last. That's here. So I'm actually helping people to get to where, because everyone wants to ignore what's really going on the inside and jump right into, oh, let me sing better. Well, the reason you don't sound genuine, the reason you sound inauthentic and X, Y, and Z is because, number one, you can't stand yourself, right? And number two, you're way too scared of what other people think. So how are we going to deal with that? And a lot of people just don't have those tools. So that's where we go in. And this is my logo here. You could probably see it makes a heart. This is the divine feminine energy, or the treble clef, right? The notes the girls sing. It's in colors. It represents the brain, the right brain. And then this is the bass clef, represents the left brain. You could see we need both sides, right? We need both sides of the brain, but they need to balance each other out. They need to support each other. So I created a chart for singers of, you know, this wonderful gentleman years ago who used to resonate. He probably has no idea how much he inspired me, but I made a chart for singers to understand not just where the vowels are placed in the mouth, right, but where they are in our body. And you can see the green one, being the heart, is in the very center. And if you just point to yourself for a moment and say me.
Me.
Yeah, where do you point to when you
Towards your heart.
Yeah, have you ever wondered, like, why do we do that? Like, how come you didn't go me, or point your stomach and go me? Like, have you ever wondered why we do this?
Your heartbeat, it keeps you alive.
It does. It's the first organ that's developed in the body, right? You know, when you see the sonogram and you see the little heartbeat. So because of that, there's more electromagnetic energy around that than any other organ, even your brain. And now heart math is proven. Back in the day, people thought it was nuts, but heart math is proven now that the heart is actually smarter than your brain. And what I know to be true, and I know there are many different ways to get from point A to point B, but what the universe, I guess you could say the universe, has shown me through my journey is that this center here, when we can get the brain to kind of cooperate with itself, right? That left side of the brain that wants to control everything, to say to the right side, all right, you're in charge. And then the creative side says, oh, let's come together and let's go on a journey. And we surpass the mind and go deep into the heart. If I have been doing certain breathing exercises, which I can share with you, to help open and stabilize the heart, I can go into the deeper layers of the heart, into the core. And this is where the name C.O.R.E Vocal Power comes from, right? C.O.R.E means heart, but core also is my center. And my core is where I got nicked open, but it's also 4 letters that are on the pathway to empowerment. The first letter being connect, right? That's the first thing that you got to do as a performer, as anyone really, is connect. And who do you connect to first?
Yourself.
Exactly. But a lot of people in the world would say your audience, or they'd say them, right? I want to control them. I want them to like me. That's the problem. The world is so backwards, and it's really up to us now to get connected, always to the earth first, right? So through our breath. So just take a breath with me and then just let it go. Yeah. And I love that you remembered you didn't go like that and like really, or go like, you know, some people do crazy things. Like when I ask them to take a breath, they're just like, you know, they become possessed all of a sudden. It's like, whoa, we're not doing yoga right now, but it's kind of like yoga for the soul. We want to be gentle and we want to allow, right? And so I've learned that working with the voice literally is working with the divine feminine. It's, you know, when people think of singing, they think of la, like they have to push something out and make people hear them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what you normally hear. You got to project.
Yeah, project and send it out. There's a whole other part to that has to do with allowing yourself to receive. So a singer is to soulfully interpret now, giving energy received. And that's what my book, Breathe into Your Power, talks about. I'm working on this 4th edition now that puts in all the new nuggets that I learned, because I initially wrote the book in 2010 when I first learned. This is what the old one looks like, see? But I'm almost done this one. I'm so excited. But the new one goes into detail about these other elements that I've learned between 2010 2010 and now. I mean, the latest edition was in 2016, but I mean, that was before I lost my voice. Since I lost my voice and was able to build it back, and the first guy I worked with, he's like, you'll never sing again. He's like, you'll never, you know, he was horrible. But sadly, a lot of, and I don't mean to speak ill on him because he didn't know better. He was a wounded singer. I remember looking at him and I saw he had a scar right here. So he obviously had some kind of surgery on his throat that made him kind of feel like maybe a failure. And that's what people do. Then they project their stuff onto the client. See, so we need to, as guides, as coaches and whatnot, we got to do our work. So for me, I really try to walk my talk. You know what I mean? Because if you don't, how can you expect someone else to do it? Right? And you don't know what you don't know, right? So before I lost my voice, I knew about my second chakra and I knew that it was important and I knew it had to be supported, but I took it for granted because I had always supported naturally. When I was younger, I just always had really good support from my stomach. And then when I healed back in 2007, I thought, okay, it's great. But see, all the breathing and all of the things that I was taught, it came through meditation. It came through me just doing nothing. It dropped in, but I still had to learn it. And so I feel like every day I still learn new things. I learn from my clients and the things that they teach me. I learn from just sitting still. I learn from making horrible mistakes, right? But no mistake is really horrible if you learn something from it, right? So that's how all this sort of came to be. And then with the heart, when you learn how to feel safe in your heart, then you can connect deeper into the solar plexus, which is your power center. And so when you start, you know, you're doing your singing, yeah, and it can just flow through you. You don't have to think like, oh, I have to sing this note. It's just there. You see, people think they have to sing from their brain. No, the mind is clear. The soul is, do you remember from class? What kind of sign is it?
The peace sign.
Yeah. And that's what I'm talking about. Just meaning like, I'm okay right now. And
being present right now.
Yeah. Most of us aren't. Most of us, like right before you sing, if I said, okay, sing, Rima, you'd be like, probably like, oh, crap. All of a sudden you're not okay. Right? So it's almost like what I'm doing is I'm undoing the programming that we give ourselves. So when I listen to someone, like if you sing or even when you're talking, I'm looking at your breathing patterns. I'm looking at where your eyes are going. I'm looking at all of the things outside of the singing. I'm looking at how fast you talk. I'm looking at, if you're here in the studio, how grounded is your energy? And I can even tell sometimes when people are sitting down, but I can't always tell because sometimes people tell me funny things about their legs. They're like, oh yeah, my leg's moving right now, but I can't see it. Like I don't always think about people's legs, you know, because you just, so that's the thing with Zoom. Even though I've been working on Zoom since 2010, or well, it was Skype before, but it's, anyway, I do digress. But my point is there are so many things that, like, look how tiny, like you would think your instrument's your voice, right? But look, that's here. But really it's all of this. And it's the mind and soul that the world has been, we ignore how we feel. We ignore how we think. We just go, oh, let me see the proof. Let me see this. We ignore how we treat ourselves, or we just think all those horrible voices in our head are us. It's not us. So empowerment is really about understanding, like, oh, just by a breath, what popped into my mind when I breathed in? How much pressure do I put on myself before I sing? What's all the subtext around my voice? How much am I really in my way, or how much am I for myself? Am I my inner cheerleader, or am I my own worst enemy? Because if I'm my own worst enemy, it's going to be pretty dang hard to pretend that I'm not. And the voice will always tell you the truth.
I love that you're saying that, because that was the biggest thing that grabbed my attention from a lot of the entrepreneurs that are in this private class, is what their voice is really saying about them. And you pointing it out in a very loving, gentle way to become stronger is what's behind it. what is behind it. It's not that the voice is wrong, it's what's behind it. So take us through that core and how you actually elevate someone before you're even working on their techniques of singing or techniques of speaking. You take them through a core exercise. You take them through a mindset change. So take us through some of those pieces so listeners understand some of the things that you delve into and they need to be aware of if they want to become more empowered in their voice, they have more courage. So take us through your process a little bit more.
It's so organic. Like I can tell you a lot of the theory, or I could make you do stuff if you want. But like there's core. Core is like the hamburger. It's like the bun, right? So core is the bun, and then there's another acronym called CHASE. CHASE is the meat. CHASE. And these 5 things are the 5 things that if people do not do these things, they're not really good. They're not going to be empowered. So just after watching and working with hundreds and hundreds of people, including myself, and seeing like who are the successful ones and how does that work? That's what I was able to come up with. And so these 5 things, they're things every time you work with me, you'll always do these things. So every class you've taken, you've done each one of these things, but I usually don't talk about it. But I'll have you do something fun just because this is fun. I'm going to have you actually pull a card. And these are, so I'll do this with my students. I used to go in order and be so left-brained about it and be like, okay, there's, this for the C and then this for the H. And now I'm like, pick a card. There's one wild card. So if you pick the wild card, that one means, I have to tell you what all of them stand for. We're going to mix these around. And what we'll do is, I'll have you do just like my clients. So I'm just going to go, mum, mum, mum,
that one.
mum, mum. What, this one?
The one before it.
This one?
Yes.
Okay, cool. You got the very first one. That's cool.
Clear.
So you got, it's actually commit to the creation. So this is the C in chase. Now this letter, this word that starts with the C, right? Every letter in chase has a courageous C. I mentioned that there is a wild card. That wild card is the word courage, because it really takes courage to do all of this. One day it won't be seen as courageous, but in our world now, just loving yourself is courageous, right? You got the red one. The reason this is red, this has to do with the root chakra. So all my stuff is color coded. Core is also color coded, and the C that stands for connect is also red. You first connect into the roots, into the ground, right? You're learning how to feel safe. You're learning how to, on my chart, it says survival. So this is a root chakra card. I'm committing to the creation. Everything I do really is a commitment, right? If I'm thinking a bad thought, I'm committing to that creation. So this is a raised level of awareness when you start to look at, what am I really committing to? And so the first thing I invite people to do is to just sit and breathe and be with themselves and find the stillness. And a lot of people are like, I don't want to sit still. I've got to go to the bathroom. I've got to go get my nails done. I've got it, right? And the beauty of what I think COVID brought the world is we all had to suddenly stop, right? A lot of people,
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't because people still wanted to sing, but a lot of people couldn't go to their 9-to-5s and they were like, oh crap, what do I do now? So what a beautiful gift. You can't run away anymore. When you find the clarity, right, which is a process, as you commit to that creation, I have people do what's called connecting and quiet confidence every morning, where you put yourself first before you check your cell phone, before you go and tend to X, Y, and Z. Even if it's just 1 minute, you stop and you say a positive thing, whether it's your breath of gratitude or I allow myself to be who I am now. That's my peaceful agreement. I have 3 peaceful agreements. It's kind of like there's a whole set of principles, but it's just what people need, but usually I have them pick it. Every time someone picks a card, they go, that's the one. By the way, does this card resonate with you?
It definitely does. It definitely does. Yes, it does. Clarity is always one of my biggest things that I'm looking for. in everything that I'm working on and doing is the purpose of it. So yes.
Beautiful. So then, yeah, like if we were in a session, right, we would do the breathing, and then you would, that would be your thing for the week. Like it would be, this is something, because we usually ask, there's always an intention. The O in CORE stands for objective, right? What do I want? You're not just connecting for no reason. You have a purpose. You connect your objective, and then the R is resonate. And then I already told you the E stands for what?
Exercise.
Good job. You're such a great student. You remembered. So yeah, so commit to the creation is the first step in Chase. And then I'd set it here so you could see, you know, you'd see the card. And then we would do some breathing exercises. And honestly, like I learned so much from people when I see them breathe. Like I learned just as much watching them breathe as I do from listening to them sing.
Dot, you have been an incredible delight with everything that you've shared. And I hope the listeners have understood that getting empowered through your voice is a lot more than simple exercises that you can find on the internet or take through someone, but actually being empowered through your body. And that's what you bring. And that's what I really wanted the listeners to learn and see through you. What is the best way that listeners and viewers can connect with you?
I would love to share that, but there's one more thing. There's one more thing
Please.
I would just love to share that I think is just
Perfect, because that was going to be my next thing. What else would you like to share
oh,
before we
beautiful.
go?
Yeah, I'm like, I got to share this. So earlier, a moment ago, I was talking about the chakras, right? And, you know, this is something people can kind of research on. It's a little more mainstream now than it used to be 10, 15 years ago. But the throat chakra, so with
Mhm.
every energy center, there's obviously like, there's certain like qualities or things like the root chakra is people that don't have a grounded root chakra feel like, oh, I'm not protected, something bad's going to happen. Most of the world, unfortunately, needs to redevelop the root chakra. They don't feel safe in the world, right? But anyway, as we move up, right, and everyone's different. So, and there's no judgment, there's no wrong. Like if you feel unsafe in the world, you're not a bad person. But when you get to the throat chakra, right? A lot of people come to me that they pretty much work through a lot of their issues and they're like, I just want to sing though. This is one thing, right? I feel like I just got to sing. The one thing that your throat chakra requires in order to be empowered, it's very simple, but quite profound. It requires you to love and accept your own uniqueness. That's it.
That's beautiful.
It sounds simple, but really it's not, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. As we see what's going on in the world and a lot of the things, yes, it's definitely a stepping stone for some people to become more accepting of themselves and loving themselves so that their voice shows through. Because we're not talking
Yeah.
about just singing, we're talking about any speaking, any entrepreneur, any human being, that becomes a part of it. And that's honestly what gravitated me towards you from those classes to go, okay, she sees something beyond just the techniques. And that's what people are needing these days, is to have a complete, holistic way of doing things. So anything else you want to share?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, and then once you get that alignment, you know, that's not to say, oh, everyone that sings like loves exactly and appreciates who they are. No, it's just you'll hear it a little off. Something will be a little off in the voice if it's not quite in alignment, and we'll sense it subconsciously. But once you start to work with that, of course, the technique part is important. And I kind of feel like what everyone tells me is, wow, Dot, this is helping not just with my voice, but in life. This applies to everything, mind, soul, body. Of course, it's a circle. It can start here. It can start here. I'm not so, it has to be this way, has to be that way. But anything to help people and know how amazing they are. Because right now on this planet, it is so important for us to really know how amazing we are as these human light-filled beings. You know, your voice it literally has the frequencies in us that will allow us to heal. I would not be sitting here right now if my voice did not heal me. I would not be sitting here. So I literally had to live those steps. I've seen so many miracles that people have created through the power of their own voice. And how do you reach me, you were asking? And I will, because I could just keep going on. I got to stop myself. I just
You know what? Yes, we could go on for a long time because you have so much to share. So that's why I want people to know how to get in touch with you, because you do have a ton of things. And very powerfully said. Please tell them how to reach you.
That's a song I wrote. You can reach me at .todman.com, DOTTODMAN.com. That's my website. But right now there's teaching stuff on there. But my brand, the other website is COREVocalPower.com. That's C-O-R-E vocalpower.com. On Instagram, I'm .Todman, DOTTODMAN. And I will be releasing this book soon. Also, if you do go on my website, go to the contact page and just put just sign up for, the newsletter or whatever, even though I never do newsletters. When I bring out this book, I'll just say that you watch the show and I'll give you like a coupon or some fun free video page. There's all sorts of fun things that I want to do. I also have a questionnaire thing on my site. So if you go on there and you're like, yeah, I saw Rima's show, and then write in the comments if you want to be a part of my classes, because what's happened is a lot of the, the private slots are pretty hard to get into. But if I have enough people that are like, yeah, we want to do a class, we'll start opening more classes for people to come in and ask me whatever they want.
And she does all of this online, guys, just so you know, so that she's accessible anywhere in the world. You can have her coaching you through your best voice. I want to thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate you. Listeners, thank you so much for being a part of this show. Remember, your attitude determines your altitude in life. So if you want your life to begin to change in any areas, look at your attitude in it. Thank you so much for joining us. See you in our next episode.